The world rarely asks who you are. It simply decides who you must have been. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below. And if you believe dignity is the strongest revenge, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to her story. The Grand Regency Ballroom sparkled beneath towering crystal chandeliers that bathed polished marble floors in rivers of golden light. Soft classical music drifted between conversations as philanthropists, CEOs, politicians, and celebrities exchanged warm smiles beneath the glow of countless camera flashes. Every detail reflected wealth, prestige, and carefully cultivated appearances. It was the kind of evening where a single introduction could open doors or quietly close them forever. Maya Brooks paused just inside the entrance. At 25, the young Black American woman wore an elegant navy evening gown that favored simplicity over extravagance. There were no diamonds around her neck, no designer logo announcing her arrival, only a slender silver bracelet resting against her wrist and a quiet confidence she had fought years to rebuild. She stood gracefully, taking in the ballroom before her eyes settled on the stage where tonight's keynote guests gathered beneath enormous floral arrangements. For a brief moment, she wondered if coming had been a mistake. Then she reminded herself that healing sometimes required walking through places that once held pain. Across the ballroom stood Ryan Foster. At 30, the successful white American millionaire moved effortlessly through circles of investors and influential guests, accepting congratulations with the polished ease of someone who had grown comfortable being admired. Expensive tailoring, confident posture, and practiced charm completed the image the business magazines loved to print. Someone whispered into Ryan's ear. He turned. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom. A subtle smile appeared on his face. Not warm, not nostalgic, merely amused. Well, he said as Maya approached within hearing distance, raising his champagne glass just enough to gather nearby attention. I didn't expect my ex-wife to actually come. Several guests glanced toward Maya. A few recognized Ryan immediately. Others recognized only the word ex-wife. The label traveled faster than her name ever could. She looks familiar, someone murmured. I think that's Ryan Foster's former wife, another replied. Oh, that single word carried quiet judgment wrapped inside polite curiosity. Ryan stepped forward with effortless confidence. I hope you're enjoying the evening. I've only just arrived, Maya answered softly. Good. His smile widened almost imperceptibly. I wouldn't want you feeling uncomfortable. A few nearby guests laughed politely, uncertain whether they had witnessed a joke or an insult. Maya simply held his gaze. There had been a time when his approval meant everything to her. That time no longer existed. You've done well for yourself, Ryan continued, glancing briefly around the ballroom. These events aren't usually open to the public. His tone remained light, almost friendly, which somehow made the words sting even more. Maya neither defended herself nor explained why she had been invited. Instead, she offered the smallest of smiles. It's a beautiful evening. Ryan waited, perhaps expecting something more. An argument, an apology, a plea. None came. Silence settled naturally between them, made heavier by the curious eyes surrounding them. One by one, conversations nearby slowed as guests discreetly observed the reunion. Nobody openly stared. Years of high society had taught them to disguise curiosity behind champagne glasses and carefully controlled expressions. Maya noticed none of it. Her attention drifted instead toward a series of photographs displayed along one ballroom wall, each highlighting community projects funded by the evening's charitable foundation. Children laughed in the pictures. Volunteers embraced families. Smiles untouched by status filled every frame. She found herself smiling gently. Behind her, Ryan watched in quiet confusion. He remembered a woman who feared disappointing him. The woman standing before him feared nothing he could offer or take away. Far beyond the ballroom windows, unnoticed by everyone inside, a pair of headlights slowly emerged from the darkness outside the hotel. Entrance. The sleek black sedan glided silently toward the front doors. Inside the ballroom, nobody yet realized that before the evening ended, the arrival of that single car would change the way every person in the room looked at Maya Brooks forever. Some wounds are remembered not because they still hurt, but because they remind us how far we have walked away from them. The soft laughter echoing beneath the crystal chandeliers slowly faded into the background as Maya Brooks stepped away from the circle surrounding Ryan Foster. No one stopped her. No one asked whether she was all right. High society had perfected the art of witnessing discomfort without ever acknowledging it. She welcomed the silence. It weighed far less than pity. Moving slowly through the ballroom, Maya paused before the gallery of photographs celebrating the Hamilton Foundation's charitable work. Children painted colorful murals in community centers. Elderly couples smiled during neighborhood outreach programs. Volunteers carried boxes of books into schools where shelves had once stood empty. She recognized one of the literacy projects immediately. A small smile touched her face. 3 years earlier, she had spent countless Saturday mornings there, organizing donated books before sunrise while children raced through the aisles searching for their next adventure. Back then, nobody knew she had once lived inside luxury apartments or attended executive dinners beside one of the country's fastest rising entrepreneurs. Those things had stopped mattering long before anyone else noticed. Behind her, Ryan accepted congratulations from another group of investors. His confident voice carried easily through the ballroom. Growth has exceeded every projection this quarter. Applause followed. Maya did not turn around. Success sounded different when it no longer belonged to your dreams. A woman standing beside the display quietly glanced toward Maya. "You volunteered for that program, didn't you?" Maya nodded. "For a while. My niece learned to read there." The woman's expression softened. "She still talks about one volunteer who always stayed after everyone else left." Maya smiled gently. "There were many wonderful volunteers. Perhaps." The woman studied her carefully. "But my niece only remembered one." Before Maya could answer, another guest approached the display and politely interrupted the conversation. The woman excused herself with a warm smile, disappearing back into the crowd. Maya remained where she was. It felt strangely comforting to be remembered for kindness instead of heartbreak. Across the ballroom, Ryan watched the exchange without understanding it. He had expected Maya to spend the evening feeling out of place, perhaps embarrassed by the distance between their lives. Instead, she moved through the room with quiet composure, speaking little, smiling sincerely, asking nothing from anyone. That unsettled him more than anger ever could. He walked toward her once again. "You seem different." Maya turned calmly. "People change. I suppose they do." Ryan slipped one hand into his pocket. "I thought tonight might be awkward." "For whom?" The question caught him unexpectedly. He searched her face for bitterness. Found none. "You're handling this better than I expected," he admitted. Maya looked briefly toward the photographs lining the wall. "Life teaches you what deserves your energy, and what doesn't." She met his eyes. "Trying to convince someone of your worth." For the first time that evening, Ryan had no clever reply. The silence between them stretched naturally before Maya offered him a polite nod and continued walking toward the ballroom entrance. Beyond the towering glass doors, rain had begun to fall across the hotel driveway. Valets moved briskly beneath black umbrellas while luxury vehicles arrived one after another, each welcomed with practiced efficiency. Then everything changed. A long, impeccably polished black sedan turned slowly beneath the illuminated entrance canopy. It made no dramatic sound, no security escort, no flashing lights. Yet the head valet immediately straightened his posture. 2 hotel managers emerged from the lobby almost simultaneously. A senior security officer quietly adjusted his earpiece before walking toward the curb. None of them spoke. None of them needed to. Inside the ballroom, guests closest to the entrance noticed the unusual movement first. Conversation slowed. Curious eyes drifted toward the rain-soaked driveway beyond the glass. Maya followed their gaze. She had no idea who was arriving. But judging by the sudden stillness spreading through the hotel, whoever stepped out of that black car possessed the kind of presence that required no introduction. Sometimes, a room doesn't fall silent because someone important has arrived. It falls silent because everyone suddenly realizes they were looking in the wrong direction. Rain shimmered beneath the grand entrance canopy as the black sedan rolled to a flawless stop before the Lexington Grand Hotel. Its glossy finish reflected the golden lights spilling from the ballroom windows, while the steady rhythm of falling rain softened every sound except the quiet hum of the engine. No company logo, no government escort, nothing announced its owner. Yet the reaction spoke louder than any introduction. The head valet reached the vehicle before it had fully stopped. Two hotel managers exchanged quick glances before stepping outside together despite the rain. A senior concierge straightened his jacket with unconscious precision, while several security officers respectfully cleared the entrance without a single spoken instruction. Inside the ballroom, conversations faded one table at a time. Curiosity spread faster than gossip ever could. Ryan Foster noticed first. His smile faltered. "Who's arriving?" one investor quietly asked. "I have no idea. But management doesn't greet ordinary guests like that." Ryan studied the entrance through the towering glass doors. He searched his memory for politicians, celebrities, international executives, anyone important enough to command such effortless attention. No answer came. Standing several feet away, Maya Brooks watched with the same quiet curiosity as everyone else. Unlike the others, she felt no urgency to know. Life had taught her that titles often impressed people far more than character ever could. The driver's door opened first. A middle-aged chauffeur stepped into the rain, holding a large black umbrella before walking calmly toward the rear passenger door. Every movement carried practiced dignity. No hurry, no performance, only quiet precision. The rear door slowly opened. Polished leather shoes touched the pavement. Then a tall man emerged beneath the umbrella. His charcoal overcoat fit with understated elegance, free of visible designer labels or unnecessary luxury. Dark brown hair, lightly touched by the rain, framed a composed face marked by calm confidence rather than calculated authority. Around 30 years old, he carried himself with the relaxed posture of someone who had never needed attention to recognize his own worth. He thanked the chauffeur with a slight nod before declining the umbrella altogether. Instead, he walked through the light rain toward the entrance as though the weather itself deserved appreciation. One hotel manager immediately extended his hand. "Good evening, Mr. Whitmore." "Good evening." His voice remained warm, unhurried. "I hope I haven't kept anyone waiting." "Not at all, sir." Ryan frowned. Whitmore. The surname sounded strangely familiar. Somewhere. A business article. An investment report. A conference. He couldn't remember. Nearby, another guest quietly whispered, "Is that Alexander Whitmore?" "I've never actually seen him before. I thought he avoided public appearances." Maya barely heard the conversation. Her attention lingered instead on the man himself. There was something unexpectedly gentle about the way he acknowledged every hotel employee by looking directly into their eyes before thanking them individually. No exaggerated charm. No rehearsed charisma. Just genuine respect offered so naturally it almost disappeared into the moment. As he entered the lobby, his eyes briefly swept across the ballroom. For one fleeting second, they met Maya's. He offered the smallest, most sincere smile. Nothing more. Then he continued walking. Maya returned the gesture almost instinctively before looking away. She assumed he had mistaken her for someone else. Across the ballroom, Ryan noticed the exchange. It lasted barely a heartbeat. Yet an unfamiliar feeling settled quietly inside him. Not jealousy. Not anger. Something far less comfortable. Uncertainty. Because for the first time, that evening, he realized he knew exactly how everyone in the ballroom saw him. But he had absolutely no idea why a man like Alexander Whitmore had looked at Maya Brooks as though she already belonged exactly where she was. The people who change your life rarely arrive with loud introductions. More often, they simply recognize your worth before anyone else remembers to look. Alexander Whitmore disappeared into the ballroom with the same quiet confidence that had marked his arrival. No cameras followed him. No public announcement echoed through the grand hall. Within moments, conversations gradually resumed, and the orchestra reclaimed the attention of most guests. Only Ryan Foster found it impossible to return to normal. The name lingered in his thoughts. Whitmore. He had definitely encountered it before. Not across magazine covers or celebrity interviews. Somewhere inside annual reports, investment briefings, or private board discussions where influential people were mentioned only when absolutely necessary. He reached for another glass of champagne without realizing it. Across the ballroom, Maya stood alone beside the foundation's photography exhibit, studying another image of children gathered around shelves of donated books. Their smiles carried a sincerity impossible to manufacture. "You still like looking at those?" The calm voice surprised her. She turned. Alexander Whitmore stood a respectful distance away, holding nothing except a glass of sparkling water. His expression remained relaxed, almost curious. "I remember this program," Maya answered softly. "You volunteered there." It wasn't a question. She blinked in surprise. "I did. For nearly 2 years." Maya searched his face. "Have we met before?" "A few times." He smiled gently. "You probably don't remember." She searched her memory. Faces. Community events. Book drives. Fundraisers. Then something surfaced. "You donated children's books." Alexander nodded. "And you stayed after everyone else left to help organize them." A quiet laugh escaped Maya. "I thought no one noticed." "I noticed." Neither of them spoke for several seconds. The silence felt comfortable rather than awkward. Behind them, guests continued discussing investments, charitable auctions, and business partnerships, yet the noise somehow seemed farther away than before. "How have you been?" Alexander asked. "Better than I expected." "I believe that." She tilted her head slightly. "You do? You're standing exactly the way people stand after they've survived something difficult." Maya looked at him with quiet curiosity. "And how do they stand?" "They stop trying to impress anyone." A faint smile appeared across her face. "That sounds oddly specific. I've spent years watching remarkable people, and the strongest among them rarely announce themselves." For the first time that evening, Maya felt completely seen. Not because someone admired her appearance, not because anyone remembered who she had once married, but because someone had quietly recognized the person she had become. Across the ballroom, Ryan noticed them speaking. Alexander listened attentively while Maya spoke, never interrupting, never glancing over her shoulder toward more influential guests. His full attention remained with her as though the crowded ballroom had disappeared. An uncomfortable pressure settled in Ryan's chest. He told himself it made no difference. Yet he found himself unable to look away. Nearby, 2 senior executives quietly approached Alexander before stopping several feet away, almost reluctant to interrupt. "Mr. Whitmore," one said respectfully, "we're honored you could attend." Alexander offered an apologetic smile. "Would you mind giving us a few more minutes?" "Of course, sir." Both executives immediately stepped back without hesitation. Ryan stared. Those were people whose phone calls usually went unanswered by Fortune 500 executives. Now they were waiting patiently for Alexander to finish an ordinary conversation. Maya noticed the exchange and lowered her voice. "I think people are looking for you. They can wait. You must be important." Alexander chuckled softly. "Not nearly as important as most people imagine." Before Maya could respond, the chairman of the Hamilton Foundation stepped away from the stage and began walking directly toward them. One by one, nearby conversations dissolved into silence. Without realizing it, nearly every eye in the ballroom followed the chairman's path, and every step he took brought him closer to Alexander Whitmore. Respect is never announced. It reveals itself in the way powerful people treat someone when they have nothing to gain. The chairman of the Hamilton Foundation crossed the ballroom with measured steps, his presence commanding attention long before he spoke. Conversations dissolved into whispers. Crystal glasses paused halfway to waiting lips. Even the orchestra softened, sensing that something unexpected was unfolding. Ryan Foster instinctively straightened his jacket. Surely the chairman was coming to greet him. After all, Ryan's company had sponsored one of the evening's largest charitable auctions. They had exchanged emails only weeks earlier. It would make perfect sense. Ryan prepared his most polished smile. The chairman walked past him without slowing. Past the investors. Past the board members. Past every guest who quietly stepped aside. He stopped directly in front of Alexander Whitmore. "Alexander," the chairman said warmly, extending both hands instead of one. "I was beginning to wonder whether you'd changed your mind." Alexander accepted the greeting with genuine humility. "My apologies. I stopped to catch up with an old friend." The chairman followed Alexander's glance. His eyes rested on Maya. "And you must be Ms. Brooks." Maya blinked, surprised. "Yes, sir." The chairman smiled kindly. "I've wanted to thank you for quite some time." She looked genuinely confused. "For what?" "For refusing to let our literacy program close 3 years ago." Maya hesitated. "I only organized volunteers." "You did much more than that." His voice carried just enough for nearby guests to hear. "When donations disappeared, you recruited teachers, local businesses, and parents. Hundreds of children kept their reading center because you believed it was worth saving." Several guests exchanged surprised glances. Ryan stared in silence. No one had ever mentioned this. Maya lowered her eyes modestly. There were many people helping. Yes, the chairman agreed. But someone had to begin. Alexander remained quietly beside her, saying nothing. His expression reflected neither pride nor surprise, as though he had always known exactly who Maya was. Another foundation director approached. Mr. Whitmore, the board is ready whenever you are. Alexander nodded politely. We'll be there shortly. Ryan felt the room changing around him. People who had ignored Maya earlier now looked at her differently. Not because of expensive jewelry, not because of status, because they had just discovered a story none of them expected. Unable to remain silent, Ryan stepped forward. I didn't realize Maya had worked with the foundation. The chairman turned politely. She never mentioned it. Ryan forced a smile. It simply never came up. Maya answered before anyone else could. Not everything important belongs on a resume. The sentence landed softly, yet somehow it echoed louder than any speech delivered that evening. For a brief moment, no one spoke. Then the chairman glanced toward Alexander. The trustees are waiting to begin. Alexander inclined his head. Of course. Before turning away, he looked at Maya. Would you do me the honor of joining us? She looked uncertain. I don't think I belong at a board table. Alexander smiled gently. Sometimes the people who change lives the most are the ones who never ask for a seat. The chairman immediately added, I couldn't agree more. He gestured toward the reserved section near the stage. Please. As Maya walked beside Alexander, guests instinctively stepped aside to make room. Nobody instructed them. Nobody announced her arrival. Respect simply moved before her. Ryan remained where he stood, watching the distance between them grow with every step. For years, he had believed he knew exactly who Maya Brooks had become after their divorce. Tonight, that certainty was disappearing piece by piece. And as Alexander escorted Maya toward the front of the ballroom, Ryan realized something even more unsettling. The evening had never been about the arrival of a mysterious billionaire. It had always been about a woman whose true worth had remained invisible until the right people finally chose to see it. The loudest victory is often the one that arrives without a single triumphant word. The reserved section near the stage overlooked the entire ballroom, yet Maya Brooks felt no desire to be seen. She followed Alexander Whitmore with quiet composure, aware that hundreds of curious eyes now traced every step they took together. The attention felt unfamiliar, almost surreal, but she refused to let it change the steady rhythm of her breathing. Alexander pulled out a chair for her before taking his own seat. It was a simple gesture. Natural. Respectful. No performance. The chairman returned to the podium moments later, smiling warmly as conversations gradually settled into silence. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. Thank you for supporting another year of community investment. Tonight is not simply about raising funds. It is about recognizing the people whose quiet work changes lives long before headlines ever notice. Applause filled the ballroom. Ryan remained standing near the center of the room, his attention fixed entirely on the front tables. He barely heard the speech. Every unanswered question circled back to the same man. Alexander Whitmore. Who exactly was he? The chairman continued. Many of our largest educational initiatives would never have existed without individuals who believed in them before success seemed possible. He paused. Our board has always believed generosity deserves privacy, but there are moments when gratitude deserves to be spoken aloud. Several trustees nodded. The chairman looked toward Alexander. For more than 6 years, one anonymous benefactor has quietly funded literacy centers, scholarship programs, and neighborhood libraries across the country. A ripple of curiosity swept through the audience. Ryan instinctively leaned forward. The chairman smiled. Most children who have benefited from those programs have never heard his name. He extended an open hand. Alexander Whitmore. The ballroom erupted into applause. Not polite applause. Genuine admiration. Alexander rose briefly, acknowledging the room with a modest nod before sitting again. Nothing about his expression suggested he enjoyed public recognition. If anything, he seemed slightly uncomfortable. Maya noticed. You didn't expect this, she whispered. No. You would have preferred they said nothing. He smiled faintly. Good work doesn't become better because people applaud. She looked at him for a long moment. That may be the most honest thing I've heard all evening. Nearby guests exchanged respectful greetings with Alexander. each waiting patiently for an appropriate moment before approaching. No one interrupted him. No one demanded attention. Influence, Maya realized, did not always announce itself through wealth. Sometimes it revealed itself through the respect freely offered by others. Across the ballroom, Ryan quietly approached one of the foundation trustees. "Excuse me," he asked carefully. "Mr. Whitmore, is he involved with the foundation?" The trustee looked surprised. "Involved?" He smiled politely. "You could say that." "What do you mean?" "He serves on our advisory board." Ryan frowned. "I wasn't aware. Very few people are." The trustee lowered his voice. "He rarely accepts public recognition. Most major initiatives here exist because he believed in them before anyone else did." Ryan felt the room tilt beneath his certainty. For years, he had measured success by visibility, headlines, and quarterly rankings. Alexander appeared to measure it by lives improved. Ryan looked toward Maya once more. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't celebrating. She simply listened as Alexander spoke quietly with volunteers, educators, and donors alike, treating each conversation with equal respect. It suddenly occurred to Ryan that he had spent the entire evening trying to understand Alexander's importance. He had asked the wrong question. The better question was why someone like Alexander had chosen to spend so much of the night beside Maya Brooks. And somewhere deep inside, Ryan felt the first unmistakable crack in the story he had spent years telling himself about the woman he believed he had left behind. The truth never needs to raise its voice. It simply waits until every lie has exhausted itself. When the applause finally faded, the ballroom settled into a quieter rhythm. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, replacing empty glasses and serving dinner with practiced elegance. Conversations resumed, but they had changed. The subject was no longer the auction, the speeches, or the evening's distinguished guests. It was Alexander Whitmore. And, unexpectedly, Maya Brooks. Ryan Foster remained where he was, watching from across the room as one respected executive after another approached Alexander's table. Some requested only a brief handshake. Others exchanged a few quiet words before moving on. None behaved with forced enthusiasm. Their respect seemed genuine, earned over years rather than manufactured by wealth. Ryan finally crossed the room toward an older gentleman he recognized immediately. Benjamin Carlisle, chairman of one of the country's largest investment firms. Someone Ryan had spent nearly 8 months trying to schedule a private meeting with. "Mr. Carlisle," Ryan said politely. The older man smiled. "Ryan, congratulations on your company's recent expansion." "Thank you. That means a great deal." Ryan hesitated before asking the question that had occupied his thoughts all evening. "If you don't mind my asking, how long have you known Mr. Whitmore?" Benjamin glanced toward Alexander before answering. "Nearly a decade. I've heard surprisingly little about him." Benjamin chuckled softly. "That is entirely by design." Ryan waited. He believes accomplishments should travel farther than names. Ryan forced a smile. He must have quite an impressive portfolio. Benjamin looked at him thoughtfully. "My young friend, most people think Alexander built successful companies." Ryan frowned. He didn't. He built people who later built successful companies. The sentence lingered in Ryan's mind long after Benjamin politely excused himself. Across the ballroom, Maya and Alexander stood near one of the panoramic windows overlooking the rain-soaked city skyline. Neither spoke for several moments. The silence felt peaceful. "You're uncomfortable with attention," Maya observed. Alexander smiled. "I prefer conversations. Yet everyone seems determined to speak with you." "They're very kind." She laughed quietly. "You really don't think much about status, do you?" "I think character survives longer." Outside, the rain had almost stopped. City lights shimmered across the wet streets below like scattered stars. "You know," Maya said softly, "for years I believed losing my marriage meant losing the future I had imagined." Alexander remained silent. She continued. "Then one morning I realized I had confused one person with my entire life." He turned toward her. "And what happened after that?" "I stopped waiting for someone else to decide whether I mattered." A quiet smile crossed Alexander's face. "I was hoping you'd say something like that." Before Maya could respond, the master of ceremonies returned to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "before we conclude tonight's program, our board would like to recognize a new strategic partnership that will shape every educational initiative we launch over the next decade." The ballroom immediately grew still. This partnership, he continued, represents the largest private commitment in the foundation's history. Ryan instinctively looked toward the stage. His company had submitted a proposal months earlier. Surely this was the announcement everyone had anticipated. The master of ceremonies unfolded a small card. We are honored to confirm that the Hamilton Foundation's exclusive 10-year partnership will move forward under the leadership of Whitmore Legacy Holdings. Soft gasps echoed across the ballroom. Ryan's expression froze. Whitmore Legacy Holdings. He knew that name. Every executive in his industry knew it. The private investment group controlled billions in long-term capital and quietly owned significant interests in companies across multiple industries. Ryan slowly turned toward Alexander. For the first time all evening, he wasn't looking at a respected philanthropist. He was looking at the man whose signature could determine the future of businesses far larger than his own. And standing beside that man, calm as ever, was the woman Ryan had once believed was simply his ex-wife. Power reveals itself most clearly when it has nothing left to prove. Silence lingered for several seconds after the announcement. Whitmore Legacy Holdings. The name settled over the ballroom like a tide, quietly washing away every assumption that had shaped the evening. Guests who had spent hours discussing market trends now exchanged thoughtful glances instead. Executives straightened instinctively. Investors recalculated conversations they wished they had started sooner. Alexander Whitmore remained exactly as he had been before the announcement. Calm, unchanged, almost embarrassed by the attention. The master of ceremonies invited him to the stage for a few closing remarks. Polite applause rose once more as Alexander walked toward the podium with measured steps. There was no dramatic music, no theatrical entrance. He thanked the chairman before resting both hands lightly against the podium. Good evening. His voice was steady enough that every corner of the ballroom heard him clearly. I've never believed generosity belongs to one person. The room became perfectly still. Every scholarship, every library, every opportunity created through this foundation exists because teachers, volunteers, parents, and neighbors decided someone else's future mattered. His eyes briefly found Maya. Some of those people never receive recognition. A quiet warmth settled across Maya's face. They continue anyway. Alexander smiled gently. I've learned those are usually the people worth following. His remarks lasted less than 3 minutes. When he stepped away from the microphone, the applause felt different. Not louder, deeper, respectful. As guests gradually returned to conversation, Ryan Foster remained rooted in place. Every certainty he had carried into the gala had dissolved. The woman he believed he had outgrown was now standing beside one of the most influential businessmen in the country, not because she had pursued power, but because someone powerful genuinely respected her. Unable to ignore the questions any longer, Ryan walked toward Maya. She noticed him approaching before he spoke. May we talk? Alexander quietly glanced toward Maya. She nodded once. I'll be nearby, he said before stepping away to greet another trustee. Ryan waited until Alexander was out of earshot. I owe you an apology. Maya listened without interrupting. I thought, Ryan hesitated. I thought your life had stopped after our divorce. She regarded him calmly. My life changed. Yes. He lowered his eyes briefly. I never asked what happened after you left. You never wanted the answer. Ryan accepted the truth without argument. I suppose I didn't. Another silence settled between them. Not hostile, simply honest. I judged you by what you no longer had, Ryan admitted, and overlooked everything you became. Maya's expression remained gentle. I don't need you to regret the past. Ryan looked up. Then what do you need? She smiled softly. Nothing. One word. No anger. No triumph. No hidden accusation. Just freedom. For the first time since they had met years earlier, Ryan understood that there was absolutely nothing left for him to offer her. Not validation. Not success. Not even an apology capable of changing history. Alexander returned quietly. Everything all right? Maya nodded. Yes. Ryan looked toward Alexander. I understand now why people respect you. Alexander answered with a small smile. I hope one day they'll say the same about her. Ryan turned toward Maya once more. The ballroom lights reflected gently in her eyes, but there was no trace of the woman he once believed needed his approval. Only quiet dignity. As Alexander offered his arm, Maya accepted it naturally. Together, they began walking toward the grand ballroom doors. No one announced their departure. Yet conversation slowed once again. Not because the richest man in the room was leaving, but because everyone had just witnessed something infinitely rarer. A woman who had walked back into the place where she had once been diminished, and left without carrying a single ounce of the past with her. The strongest revenge is not watching someone lose everything. It is realizing you no longer need to watch it all. The gala slowly drew toward its conclusion as guests gathered beneath the towering crystal chandeliers for one final toast. Laughter returned to the ballroom, though softer than before, touched now with quiet reflection instead of effortless confidence. Maya Brooks stood beside the panoramic windows overlooking the city skyline. Rain clouds had drifted away, leaving Manhattan wrapped in countless lights that shimmered across the streets below. Alexander Whitmore joined her, carrying 2 glasses of sparkling water. "I thought you might prefer this." She accepted one with a grateful smile. "You're learning. I've had a good teacher." She laughed softly. "I've taught you very little." "I disagree." He looked toward the city beyond the glass. "You reminded me why the work matters." Before Maya could answer, the chairman approached once more. "Alexander." "Mr. Chairman." The older gentleman smiled warmly before turning to Maya. "I hope this won't be the last event we share." "I hope not either. We'll be announcing a new national literacy initiative next month." He paused, "And the board unanimously agreed that we'd like you to help lead it." Maya stared at him in surprise. "Me? You've already been leading communities for years." He smiled. "We're simply giving the title to someone who's already earned it." Emotion quietly filled her eyes. Not because of recognition, because someone had finally seen the years of invisible work that had never appeared in headlines. After exchanging farewells, Alexander and Maya made their way toward the grand entrance. Guests stepped aside naturally as they passed. Some smiled. Others nodded respectfully. Several volunteers warmly thanked Maya for inspiring them. None of those gestures had anything to do with Alexander's wealth. They belonged entirely to her. Near the entrance, Ryan Foster stood alone. The ballroom behind him buzzed with conversations that no longer revolved around his achievements. He watched Maya approach. This time, there was no confidence left to hide behind. "I wanted to say one last thing." Maya stopped. Ryan took a slow breath. "I spent years believing success meant proving I had made the right decision." She listened quietly. "But tonight I realized something." He glanced briefly toward Alexander before looking back at her. "The greatest mistake I ever made wasn't losing our marriage." His voice became almost a whisper. "It was never seeing the woman standing beside me." Maya's expression remained gentle. There was a time when hearing those words would have meant everything. Ryan lowered his eyes. "I know, but that time has passed." There was no cruelty in her voice, only peace. Alexander opened the hotel doors. Cool evening air drifted inside. Outside, the same black sedan waited quietly beneath the entrance lights. The chauffeur respectfully opened the rear door before stepping aside. Ryan watched in silence, not because of the luxury car, but because he finally understood what it represented. It had never been a symbol of wealth. It was simply the vehicle that arrived on the night Maya stopped being introduced as someone's ex-wife. Alexander offered his hand. Maya accepted it naturally before stepping into the car. Just before the door closed, she looked once more toward the brightly lit ballroom. Not searching for Ryan, not searching for the past, only saying goodbye to a chapter she no longer needed to carry. The sedan pulled away smoothly, disappearing into the glowing streets of Manhattan. Ryan remained standing beneath the hotel lights until the taillights vanished into the distance. Only then did he understand that he hadn't lost Maya to another man. He had lost her the moment he failed to recognize the extraordinary woman she had always been. Inside the moving car, Maya rested quietly against the seat as the city lights slipped past the window. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She wasn't thinking about regret. She was thinking about tomorrow. Because the happiest endings are never about returning to the past. They begin the moment you finally choose to leave it behind.